The world's most critical energy artery has been choked by Iran. Global superpowers are panicking as 20% of the world's oil is suddenly trapped. The global economy is staring at a catastrophic collapse. But if you look closely at the waters, Indian-flagged vessels are sailing through safely. While Washington scrambles, New Delhi has executed a quiet but massive geopolitical masterstroke. Let us analyze how. To understand power, you must look at leverage. Right now, Tehran holds the ultimate leverage over the global economy. Ever since the war dynamics shifted on February 28th between Iran, Israel and the United States, the Iranians decided to play their trump card. They choked the Strait of Hormuz. This is not just a blockade, it is a global hostage situation. We are looking at 25% of the world's oil supply absolutely paralyzed. Let us look at the geography here, because in geopolitics, geography dictates strategy. If you pull up the map of the Middle East, focus your attention on that narrow sliver of water separating the Iranian coast and the Musandam Peninsula of Oman. That is the Strait of Hormuz. It connects the oil-rich Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and eventually out to the Arabian Sea. At its narrowest point, it is barely 21 miles wide, but the shipping lanes, the deep water channels required for massive supertankers, are even narrower. They are just 2 miles wide in either direction. When you control this tiny geographical choke point, you control the heartbeat of the global industrial machine. Currently, there are 22 India-bound vessels carrying over 600 seafarers stranded on the western side of the strait. 4 more are stuck on the eastern side. But the broader picture is much worse for the West. For decades, the United States has positioned itself as the absolute guarantor of maritime security. Washington dictates the rules of global trade based on its massive naval footprint, specifically the US Fifth Fleet stationed in nearby Bahrain. Yet, look at the reality on the water today. The American Naval Presence is completely failing to deter Iranian asymmetric tactics. Iran does not need a massive blue water navy to control the strait. They rely on the geography of their rugged coastline. They use swarms of fast attack speedboats, anti-ship cruise missiles hidden in coastal caves, and cheap suicide drones. This is the brutal reality of asymmetric warfare. A $2,000 Iranian drone can force a $2 billion American destroyer into a defensive posture. The American military machine is highly advanced, but in the confined waters of the Persian Gulf, it is clumsy and highly vulnerable. This brings us to the ultimate hypocrisy of global power politics. Western nations publicly declare that freedom of navigation is an absolute international right. They demand grand maritime coalitions and demand that the rest of the world falls in line. But when the actual shooting starts, their commercial vessels are the first to be targeted, while their military escorts struggle to secure the shipping lanes. The West demands that developing nations halt their economic growth to participate in their sanctions and geopolitical games, yet they cannot even keep the sea lanes open for basic energy transit. Freight rates are skyrocketing. War risk insurance premiums for cargo ships have exploded. The global south is expected to pay the price for Western geopolitical failures. This is exactly where India's silent but lethal geopolitical strategy comes into play. India imports roughly 80% of its crude oil requirements, and a massive chunk of that flows directly through this contested strait. A complete shutdown would mean a devastating inflation spike in the Indian domestic market. It would slow down manufacturing and hurt the common citizen. So, what does a rising power do when the global policeman fails to do its job? It takes matters into its own hands. Under Operation Sankalp, the Indian Navy has transformed from a regional observer into a formidable net security provider. Look at the naval deployment on the map right now. India has positioned the INS Surat, a modern, highly lethal missile destroyer armed with long-range surface-to-air missiles and heavy torpedoes right in the Gulf of Oman. This is a clear projection of hard power. Further down the map, in the Gulf of Aden, 3 Indian warships are actively hunting pirates and securing the passage connecting the Suez Canal to the Red Sea. The Indian Navy's footprint now spans across the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Bengal, all the way down to the Maldives and Seychelles. But hard military power is useless without the cynical and calculated application of diplomacy, and this is where India executed a true masterstroke. While Washington was busy issuing red lines and threats on television, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar picked up the phone and opened direct lines of communication with Tehran. There is no grand moral alliance here. It is pure, transactional, realist statecraft. Jaishankar made it explicitly clear that India does not have a blanket security arrangement with with Iran, but rather every single ship movement is being aggressively negotiated behind closed doors. And the results of this ruthless pragmatism speak for themselves. While Western oil tankers are turning off their transponders in fear and fleeing the region, Indian-flagged vessels are confidently navigating the war zone. The LPG carrier Shivalik, carrying 40,000 metric tons of liquefied petroleum gas, safely passed the choke point and successfully docked at Mundra port in Gujarat. The Jag Laadki, loaded with 81,000 tons of Murban crude oil, sailed straight out of the heavily attacked Fujairah terminal in the UAE and is heading safely to Indian shores. The Nanda Devi, another massive gas carrier, successfully reached the Vadinar port to fuel Indian homes and industries. This is the textbook definition of strategic autonomy. When the United States formed Operation Prosperity Guardian to fight in the Red Sea, they pressured India to join. India refused to put its ships under American command. Instead, India deployed independently. India is demonstrating to the world that it does not need to hide behind the American security umbrella anymore. In a fractured, multipolar world, you survive by maintaining direct leverage and communication with all sides, even those heavily sanctioned by the West. India is effectively telling the Middle East, we are your biggest and most reliable market, and our military is fully capable of protecting our strategic assets without Western permission. The strategic lesson here is undeniable. India must continue to rapidly expand its blue water navy. The era of relying on Western maritime security to protect Indian trade is permanently over. The concept of Atmanirbharta or self-reliance cannot just be limited to domestic manufacturing and economics. It must extend to the hard military capability to project power thousands of miles away from our shores. India must relentlessly pursue its own national interest, refusing to become collateral damage in the proxy wars of fading superpowers. The global order is shifting, and India is carving out its own sphere of influence through force and diplomacy. Let us test your geographical awareness to see if you understand the stakes of this region. A quick question for you. Which two countries share the direct coastline of the Strait of Hormuz? Is it A, Iran and the United Arab Emirates, B, Iran and Oman, C, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, or D, Iraq and Kuwait? Let me know your answer in the comments below. In geopolitics, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. Thank you for listening.